With meaningful baseball games right around the corner, as fantasy baseball owners, we're all hoping for a big second half. And to assist with that, I have some great names you all need to add on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino. If you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It subscribes to the channel and gives you notification every time we drop a new episode. And lastly, but most importantly to Matt and I, give us a chance on the Subtext platform. Through Subtext, it's an in-depth, personalized experience through text message alerts right to your phone, offering so much more than we can in this 30-minute episode. And if you are interested in our Subtext, you can find the link to our Subtext wherever you're listening or watching, or if not, it's available on any of our social media platforms. And guys, we have a great episode for you today. I hope you've enjoyed the All-Star break as much as I have. It was cool to see Teoscar Hernandez win the home run derby, and the All-Star game was pretty interesting as well. But with that being out of the way, and as I mentioned at the top, meaningful baseball right around the corner, I do have some great names that we all should look into adding. And let's start with a call up here. Let's start with River Ryan of the Los Angeles Dodgers, who looks like he's going to be making his debut very shortly after the All-Star break. What an interesting name. We all know the Dodgers are great with not just prospects in general, but River Ryan is a starting pitcher, 6'2", 195 pounds, right? And in the minors this year, as a 25-year-old, River Ryan has 8 starts, a 2.22 ERA, 24 innings, 32 strikeouts, only 8 walks, and a 1.02 WHIP. River Ryan, throughout his career, has been, a pretty solid strikeout guy. Has, suppressed runs decently. Has had a couple of high 3 ERA seasons, but you know what? That's acceptable for a guy who's coming up through the minors. Is known for his fastball, which peaks at around 99, sits around 95, 97, has a nice break to it. Also has a plus curveball and slider, which makes for a very nice repertoire here. I love that he does have that third pitch that he throws. So it's going to be cool to see River Ryan come up for those Los Angeles Dodgers and get his chance to start in that rotation. It might not be a long-term thing for River Ryan, but you know what? If he calls up and if he gets called up and he's successful, I don't know how you send a guy like that back down. At 5% owned on Yahoo, River Ryan is somebody that's widely available, and I just thought he was a fun name to start the episode with. And, as I mentioned, they do have a lot of options there. If Bobby Miller gets it together, if Kershaw, Glasnow, Yamamoto, if everyone really gets healthy, there might not be a spot for Ryan. But as I said, I'm just adding him right now on that speculative chance that, he gets to stay in the rotation. And even if not, he has a couple of good starts. You just drop him after his time has come and gone. But River Ryan is a name that we should all know and be looking at. And, just give him the speculative chance right now, because who knows what the next start may bring. Let's move on to another young pitcher. Let's talk about Christian Scott of those New York Mets, another starting pitcher here. And if you're not familiar, that's how we do things around here. We're going to talk about those starting pitchers first, and then we're going to work our way into those bats. So you're going to want to stick around. But as I mentioned, we're going to talk some Christian Scott. Now, Christian Scott has had, ups and downs so far as, his rookie season in the bigs. As a 25-year-old, Christian Scott has 8 starts in the majors this year with a 4.36 ERA, 43 innings, 35 strikeouts, 10 walks, and a 1.10 WHIP. Now Scott, like I said, mixed bag here, but has been very successful in the minors this year and the last. That's like almost 30 starts there, 28 starts with a sub-3 ERA, well over a K per 9. The whip is a sub-1 during that time for Christian Scott. So just a guy who's, adjusting to big league hitting, and I think there's better days ahead for Christian Scott. Has been successful here and there. His last start wasn't great, but against Pittsburgh on July 8th, went 5.2 innings, 3 strikeouts, gave up a couple runs, had an 0.35 whip. Has had successful starts against good teams. He's been good against Arizona this year. Had a nice start against San Francisco. Pitched against Atlanta on May 11th. It wasn't really bad either. Just a couple of little blow-up starts here for Christian Scott. If I really had to throw it, I say there's 3 abysmal starts, and then the rest of them have either been pretty good or at least serviceable. So with Christian Scott being only 23% owned, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Starting pitcher has taken a turn for the worst, and with a guy who, does have strikeout upside, hasn't really displayed it in, a bundle so far, has displayed it in certain starts, as I mentioned. Let's document those. It was the 8 strikeouts against Atlanta, had a 6 strikeout game in his first start, has tampered off since then, but in his last start did have 5 strikeouts against 4 innings against Colorado. Did get hit around that game, but Christian Scott, starting pitcher of the New York Mets, is somebody that I do like going forward. Young pitcher, as I mentioned, but really does have a lot of upside. Let's move on from one Mets pitcher to another. Let's talk some David Peterson. And David Peterson has just been like a guilty pleasure. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he kind of said the same thing. We laughed in solitude together because we know that David Peterson is good in, little bits at a time, gives up too much contact. So I don't love him, but just a name that I'm going to keep our eyes on because he can be serviceable in stints. So far on the year, David Peterson has a 3.09 ERA through 8 starts. He has 4 wins, 104. A 1.42 whip, 43 innings pitched, and 32 strikeouts. And he's actually been pretty good in his last few, except the one against Pittsburgh on July 6th. He's been really good in 3 out of his last 4. I think we had David Peterson to see what he's going to, give us after the All-Star break. It looks like he's going to line up against maybe Miami. So that's actually a pretty good start for Mr. Peterson. The underlying stuff doesn't look fantastic. He's getting a lot of ground balls, which I do like. The ERA estimators don't love him. The pitches are actually moving decently. The off-speed stuff is working for him, and the fastball's been all right. Throws 5 pitches at least 7% of the time, and even 4 of them 16% of the time. And, he honestly, I think if he really laid off that sinker, which is his most thrown pitch, which is getting hit at a 327 clip, he might be a little bit more successful. That fastball's working for him. Slider, not so much. So David Peterson, honestly, there is a path for him to be a pretty successful starting pitcher for us. But, this kind of 12% owned deeper league, stuff like that, I think we take the look and kind of just ride the wave with David Peterson here. But before we move on and talk some another young pitcher and move into these bats, I do have a quick ad break for you guys. And guys, this episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival city. From hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. And anytime we talk about Booking.com, I love to talk about Camden Yards because I've been there a few times before, and what a beautiful field. And when I'm there, I almost forget that I'm a Yankee fan because I just love being there. Baltimore has a great team and with that great stadium. So with Booking.com, they can help you fall in love with even your team's rival city. So once again, use Booking.com to book today on Booking.com, the website, or the Booking.com app. And then Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Exploring my skills on Prize Picks this season adds an extra layer of excitement to daily fantasy sports. With just a few taps, you can transform $10 into $1,000 easily. Prize Picks is incredibly user-friendly. You make selections and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. And as the host of Locked On Fantasy Baseball, here's some rock-solid picks. You can opt for Paul Skeens to have higher than 8 strikeouts in his next start, and Paul Skeens has taken the fantasy baseball world by storm. Not even just the fantasy baseball world, the MLB by storm. So 8 strikeouts is an easy one for Paul Skeens. You can opt for Jose Ramirez to have higher than 1.45 total bases in his next outing, and with Jose Ramirez being on an MVP-type streak this year, that's a lock. Or opt for Bobby Witt Jr. to have higher than 0.5 home runs in his next game, and he finished second in the home run derby, so you know what, that one is pretty solid as well. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch over to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for your everyday to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, news, and streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. You're not going to want to miss out. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And then once again, I want to talk to you guys about the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast Diamond Club on the Subtext platform. It's going to be your ultimate fantasy baseball companion. As this season continues to unfold, you can rely on Matt and I for our dynamic content. You get real-time alerts right to your phone, including waiver wire rankings, instant call-up notifications, injury reactions, and a whole lot more than we can offer in this 30-minute podcast. Stay ahead of your fantasy league by joining the Diamond Club on Subtext, where the path to your victories begin. Subscribe now and elevate your fantasy baseball experience to a new level. And all right, guys, let's just jump right back into it and wrap up with this last pitcher before we move into bats. Let's talk about Spencer Schwellenbach, starting pitcher from those Atlanta Braves. Now, Schwellenbach got called up with actually a really strong track record for the minors, and I was pretty excited about him. Got off to a rough start, and through Schwellenbach's first 8 starts in the bigs, the start of his career, it's a 4.43 ERA, 44 innings, 41 strikeouts with a 1.16 whip. And Schwellenbach's actually a nice, big 6'1", 200 pounds, righty. The underlying stuff actually kind of likes him. He's getting a lot of chases. He's not walking too many guys. He's not getting really hit hard. The underlying stuff when it comes to ERA actually looks fantastic. Fastball is getting hit a little bit too hard. Everything else is manageable. The cutter is getting hit at a 267 clip, which is next highest, and that's serviceable. If he could just work on that fastball playing up a little bit better, and honestly, it looks like the movement isn't fantastic on Schwellenbach's fastball. Once again, Spencer Schwellenbach, starting pitcher Atlanta Braves, is who I'm talking about here. I really think this kid has a lot of upside. Honestly, out of all of the pitchers that we talked about today, River Ryan does have a lot of upside, but right now, I think Schwellenbach's got a chance to stick around in that Braves rotation. I just really want to see what he can do. In Schwellenbach's last start against the Padres, he went 7 innings, only struck out 3, but only gave up 1 run, had an 0.57 whip in the one before that against the Phillies, who have been one of the best teams in all of baseball. Schwellenbach went 6 innings, struck out 6, only 1 earned run, a 1.17 whip, had 2 clunkers before that, had 2 good ones before that, and then had 2 bad ones before that. So with Schwellenbach, he's actually pitched good against Baltimore, Phillies, San Diego. So this kid can play up against those, better teams. Let's see him just beat up on some of these bad teams that have hit him around a little bit. At 25% owned, the young Spencer Schwellenbach is somebody that I really do like. I'm still holding on a couple of teams. So I am preaching what I'm talking over here. So let's move on from the pitchers to the hitters here. Let's talk about an interesting name in Lawrence Butler, right? Lawrence Butler has kind of come out of nowhere, at least for me, he has, and just hitting for some power, kind of doing that Reese Hines, type of thing over here, and just a small sample size here from Butler, but he's been, pretty solid so far, at least when it comes to the power. 193 plate appearances, which is 175 at-bats, 20 runs, 9 homers, 6 stolen bases, a 211 batting average. But the underlying stuff really likes what he's been doing. Expects him to hit out a 236 batting average. Bat speed looks good. Exit velocity looks good. Kid's got, a good amount of pop in that bat, which you really like to see. Does unfortunately play for those Oakland Athletics, so the counting stats aren't really going to be super sexy when it comes to Lawrence Butler. But he's a guy that I think, maybe in some of those deeper leagues, we can give him a shot. He's 6'3", 210, lefty bat, kind of, trying to peek in on his minor league track record here, which I'm not too familiar with. Actually pretty decent the last couple of years in the minors this year. He was hitting 255 with 4 homers in 27 games. In 2023, he hit 284. Once again, Lawrence Butler, who we're talking about here, 15 homers, 70 RBIs, 21 steals. So he does have speed in his game as well. So if you're looking for a guy who's got some pop, got some speed, you can give Lawrence Butler a shot. Let's just grab his ownership percentage for you guys on Yahoo. Right now, Lawrence Butler is actually up to 20% owned, and he's risen 20% kind of rapidly because these home runs have come in bunches. He hit 3 of them on July 14th, 6 RBIs for Lawrence Butler, and he's had the leadoff spot for past couple of games, so that looks good for him too. So he might have actually a decent amount of runs. The homers, as I mentioned, have been coming in bunches. The steals, the speed is legit. So I think Lawrence Butler is somebody, like I told you, I'm pretty interested in. Actually, let's do it like this, because what's he hitting over the last 14 days, right? 303 over the last 14 days. 6 of his homers have come in that time with 2 steals and 14 RBIs. If anything, this is a guy you add him while he's hot. If he's still hitting homers, you add him in on the back of a trade. And, you see, Lawrence Butler, he's been super hot. He's been hitting a bunch of home runs. Oh, yeah, take him too. So that is always a fun way to play that. So we can do that with Lawrence Butler. And you know what? If you add him and he stays hitting these home runs, he might even just stay on the back of your bench there, and you just play him when you need that power, right? Let's move on to our next guy, though. Let's talk some Xavier Edwards from the Miami Marlins. A little bit of an interesting guy. Has only 54 at-bats so far this year, 7 runs, no homers, 3 RBIs, 3 steals, with a 352 batting average. He's been hitting, kind of all over the lineup recently, 2nd, 6th, 5th. So at least it's been near the top of late. He's got some legit speed. The hit tool is somewhat decent for Xavier Edwards. He's not somebody I don't think we're going to be relying on for the rest of the season. But, the name of the game is to juice the orange. I get that. Saying from Tristan Cockcroft, if you're not familiar, one of the great fantasy baseball players of all time. He used to host the ESPN Fantasy Baseball podcast. So shout out to Tristan Cockcroft for that term, because I think it embodies a great thing in fantasy sports, where you find a guy like Xavier Edwards and you kind of, you just juice the orange. You get the most out of him while you can. Then you just drop him while he's hot. Underlying stuff when it comes to Edwards, sweet spot, he's hitting that pretty well. Bat speed, not so great. He's squaring the ball up pretty decently, not chasing or whiffing a lot. That's why the batting average has been so good. Xavier Edwards is not somebody who is, a highly, highly touted prospect. But the minor league track record is once again something let's dig into together here for him. Actually, pretty solid. 330 batting average this year in the minors, 351 batting average last year. Has actually always been a pretty strong batting average guy in the minors. Always been able to steal bases. As I mentioned to you earlier, the speed is legit with Xavier Edwards. And his ownership percentage only being 7%. And he has that shortstop and second base eligibility. You gotta love it. Somebody that I actually think can be a sneaky ad heading into the second half. And coming up next, we are going to talk about some Zack Netto, some Tyler Stevenson, some Mason Winn before we head out of here. And once again, those names are coming up next. And guys, we're talking about our friends over at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood to. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody all day long this summer. And guys, I didn't steer you wrong when it came to those Boston Celtics in the NBA's finals, and I won't steer you wrong when it comes to FanDuel either. There's so many fun and interesting bets they have over the summer when it comes to MLB games. So you need to head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer now. And then get supplies from the site that's made for skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. All right, guys, we are into the home stretch here. Just a few more names for you, but they are good ones, so you're going to want to stick around and hear all of them. But the first one is Zack Netto. Zack Netto is somebody we've actually talked about a decent amount. Even last year, we talked about Zack Netto a little bit. Just been very sneakily solid. This year, the young Zack Netto, the 23-year-old, 6 foot, 185-pound righty from the Angels, on the year, 93 games, 319 at-bats, 37 runs, 22 doubles, 12 homers, 42 RBIs, 14 steals, 17 walks to 80 strikeouts. So he's not necessarily the best points league guy, but the 251 batting average isn't killing you. So he's got the pop, he's got the speed, he's contributing in multiple different categories. The counting stats are, actually serviceable as well. I know there's been a couple of times where I needed to plug Netto into my starting lineup due to injuries, and I wasn't disappointed by it. Netto's only 34% owned and has been pretty solid of late as well. Young guys like this that, once they get attuned to the game, and Netto actually was a decent prospect coming up through the minors. He's hitting 273 over the last week. The counting stats aren't super sexy there over the last 2 weeks, though. 3 steals for Netto with a homer, 4 runs, 4 RBIs, 286 batting average. So he's actually been better of late, and that, like I mentioned, very low ownership percentage. The underlying stuff for Netto, though, that actually doesn't look super fantastic. But you know what? When you're looking at a whole season's worth of the underlying data, it's not really going to tell you over the last month how he's been doing. And when I read you off those numbers for the 23-year-old over the past 2 weeks, he has been turning it back on. And with that prospect pedigree, I really think we should give Zack Netto a chance. He is shortstop eligibility on Yahoo. And once again, he plays for those Angels, if you didn't remember. Let's move on to our next guy. Let's talk some Tyler Stevenson. Tyler Stevenson is somebody a few years ago I really thought he was going to be a breakout at the catcher position. Injuries and, a little bit of performance has, stopped him from doing that. But, hey, he's still been serviceable, and I wanted to throw a catcher at you guys in case you needed one. He's only 25% owned. He's hitting 245 on the year through his 79 games, 37 runs, 10 homers, 34 RBIs, and that's chipped in a steal as well. And Stevenson, somebody's actually been red hot. He had a stretch from July 9th to July 11th where he hit 4 homers in 3 games, had 8 RBIs over that time with 6 runs and 2 for 8 hits over that time. So Stevenson is on a heater right now. He gets those nationals coming out of the All-Star break. The pitching staff isn't really something I'm scared of at all. So Tyler Stevenson is definitely somebody you can go out there and snag, and just want to pop in on the underlying stuff to see how it looks for him on the year. Mr. Stevenson has actually been pretty good when it comes to underlying stuff. He's barreling up. He's hitting the ball hard. The exit velocity has been there. Not chasing, not whiffing, not striking out. So he's actually, helping you somewhat in those points leagues as well. And he's still only 27-year-old. He's a really big baseball boy. Mr. Tyler Stevenson is 6'4", 225. So I think there's a path where, even the batting average, expected batting average for Stevenson's around 250. So he's right around there. Not a guy that's going to blow you away in that category, but if he can hit you 25 plus homers, have some good runs and RBIs on that Reds team, that's great for fantasy baseball. I think he's worth the ad. And, at the very low ownership percentage of 25%, I think that he needs to be at least 50% owned, if not 55% owned, especially in those two catcher leagues. I think more than 25% of leagues on Yahoo play with two catchers, or at least deep benches where you might want to have another one ready. So let's move Tyler Stevenson's ownership percentage up. And let's move on to the last name of the night, and that is Masyn Winn of those St. Louis Cardinals. Mason Winn has actually really blown me away with his offensive performance this year. Didn't really see it coming from him. 284 batting average for Winn with 42 runs, 5 homers, 33 RBIs, and 9 steals. He's only 34% owned on Yahoo. Another guy that was more known for his defense coming up, but has actually translated on the offensive side of things as well. Only 22 years old. I think Winn is somebody who has a bright future ahead in the major leagues. In his cup of coffee last year, only 37 games, only hit 172. And this is why I preach to you guys. Let's be patient with some of these prospects. Not everybody's, Tatis or Acuna or Soto that comes up and just dominates right away. And Wynn's a great example. Cup of coffee last year wasn't great. Came back up this year, and through his 88 games has been dominant. Has the track record through the minor leagues, at least through 2022 and 2023 was really good when it came to the batting average. Had a good amount of homers in those years. Stole a good amount of bases. Just really, really like what Mason Winn brings to the table. And when it comes to that underlying stuff for Mr. Mason Winn, I know the defensive stuff always looks great for him, which it does. The sprint speed looks really good. Not striking out too much. Getting the sweet spot. A lot of the underlying other stuff doesn't look fantastic for him, but I'm buying into the 22-year-old Mason Winn, a very talented young baseball player that I think we should all, at least give him a chance if you need that shortstop help. And guys, with that being said, that is all for today. We hope you enjoyed the content that we put out over the All-Star break, kind of switched things up a little bit during that time period. And once again, I would love you guys' feedback if you enjoyed that content or not. But once again, that's all for today. So please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. And thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. Guys, once again, truly appreciate you. Matt had the night off. So until next time, guys.